Warning disclaimer: this story is a work based on true events but modified for storytelling purposes. Some names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. This content contains emotionally intense and suspenseful scenes that may be disturbing for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The story is intended for mature audiences and is meant to raise awareness about personal safety, trust, and instincts. It was supposed to be just another ordinary Wednesday. The sun was out, the sky was clear, and I had wrapped up a long day at work. I worked as a graphic designer from home most days, but on that particular day, I had an in-person client meeting across town. After that, I stopped by the supermarket to grab some essentials, hoping to be home before sunset. My neighborhood was usually quiet and calm, lined with modest homes, familiar faces, and friendly smiles. I'd only moved there about 6 months ago, and though I didn't know everyone personally, people seemed decent. Among the familiar faces was David, the man who lived across the street with his wife, Linda. He was friendly, always quick with a wave or a neighborly smile, and nothing about him had ever raised concern, until that night. As I pushed my grocery cart across the dimly lit parking lot, I clicked my car remote. But nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. I walked over to my car and saw that the dome light inside wasn't turning on either. My heart sank. My phone was at 6%, and I hadn't brought my portable charger. I tried starting the car manually, but the engine wouldn't turn over. It was dead. The timing couldn't be worse. The parking lot was nearly empty, the air was cooling quickly, and I was at least 25 minutes from home. I stood next to my useless car, debating whether to call for roadside assistance or risk walking to a nearby diner to charge my phone. That's when I heard a car pull in behind me. The headlights blinded me for a second. I shielded my eyes and stepped aside. Then I heard someone call my name. "Hey, it's me, David," said the voice. I recognized the silhouette as he stepped out of the driver's seat. Dressed in jeans and a navy jacket, he looked like he had just come from work. "Car trouble?" he asked, walking over casually. "Yeah, it won't start," I replied, a bit relieved to see someone I recognized. "I can give you a ride home if you want," he offered. For a moment, I hesitated. I didn't know him well, but he wasn't a stranger. We'd spoken a few times while taking out the trash or checking mail. He seemed normal, helpful even. And standing alone in a dark parking lot wasn't ideal. "You sure it's okay?" I asked. "Of course," he smiled. "I'm headed that way anyway." I gave in. "Okay, thanks. I really appreciate it." I grabbed my grocery bags, locked my useless car, and followed him to his vehicle. As I sat in the passenger seat and buckled up, I had no idea that this simple decision, accepting a ride from a familiar face, was about to lead me into one of the most chilling experiences of my life. The engine hummed smoothly as David pulled the car out of the parking lot. The inside of his vehicle was clean but quiet, almost too quiet. The only sound was the soft rattle of plastic grocery bags in the back seat. He hadn't turned on the radio, and the silence between us felt heavier than it should have. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just tired. It had been a long day for everyone. "So, how's the new neighborhood treating you?" he asked, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I smiled politely. "It's been good. Peaceful mostly. People seem friendly." "Yeah," he nodded, glancing at me for a second. "It's a nice place. Not like the city, too much chaos there." I nodded in agreement, though I couldn't help but notice the way he kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye. Maybe I was overthinking it. I was just anxious because of the car situation, I told myself. He continued, "You know, I've seen you a few times walking alone. You should be careful. You never know who's watching these days." His words caught me off guard. The way he said it felt strange, like a warning, or maybe something else. I gave a nervous laugh. "Well, I don't go far. Just the market and sometimes the park." "Still," he said, his tone flatter now, "a woman alone can attract the wrong kind of attention." I forced a smile. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." He leaned slightly toward the steering wheel, his fingers gripping it a little tighter. The streetlights flickered past the windows, casting momentary shadows on his face. I realized then how dimly lit the road was. He hadn't taken the main street. I noticed we were passing through a back road lined with thick trees and barely any street signs. "Isn't this the long way home?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He smirked. "Yeah, I guess. I just don't like traffic. This route's quieter." Something about that answer didn't sit right with me. I didn't know the area well enough to argue, but I knew enough to realize this wasn't the usual way. My grip on my purse tightened a little. I checked my phone again, 3% battery. Just great. Trying to ease the tension, I changed the subject. So, how's Linda? I haven't seen her around much lately. His jaw tightened ever so slightly. She's been staying with her sister. They've got some family stuff going on. I nodded slowly. The air in the car felt denser now. As much as I tried to stay calm, every word he spoke seemed to carry a weight I couldn't explain. There was no open aggression in his voice, but there was something else. An energy, a darkness, barely hidden beneath his calm surface. Must get lonely, huh? He added suddenly, his tone lighter again. Living all must get lonely, huh? David repeated with a slight grin, his eyes darting toward me briefly before turning back to the road. I gave a soft chuckle, more out of discomfort than humor. I don't mind it. I like quiet. Makes sense, he replied, but quiet can get dangerous too. Especially when people don't know who's around. The way he said it, it wasn't just a statement. It sounded layered, like there was a second meaning tucked beneath his words. Something that didn't sit right. I looked out the window, trying to calm the uneasy feeling building in my chest. The road we were on had become unfamiliar. No streetlights, no passing cars. Just trees on either side and long, dark stretches of pavement. I shifted in my seat. Hey, I think you missed the turn for Brookside, I said, my voice polite but cautious. Oh. He tilted his head. This is just a shortcut. Cuts through to the other side of town. Don't worry, I've lived around here a long time. I know these roads like the back of my hand. His explanation was quick, too quick, and it didn't feel reassuring. I had driven to and from work plenty of times, and I'd never seen this road before. It wasn't a shortcut I'd ever noticed on a map either. I nodded silently, choosing not to argue. But inside, I was starting to panic. My phone was now at 2% battery. I turned the screen brightness down and opened the Maps app, hoping for a signal. Nothing. No GPS. No bars. Just a spinning loading symbol in the corner of the screen. David seemed to notice me fiddling with my phone. Signal's bad around here. Dead zone, he said. Won't help you much. His tone had changed. It was flatter now, almost bored, but there was a sharp edge to it, like he was enjoying my discomfort. I laughed nervously. I didn't realize we had dead zones this close to the neighborhood. Yeah, he said softly. There's a lot people don't realize. Something about that sentence chilled me. It was too vague to understand, but too heavy to ignore. My heart began to pound faster, my instincts screaming that something wasn't right. I started to take deeper breaths, quietly reminding myself to stay calm. I glanced at the dashboard. No GPS on his screen either. He didn't even seem to be using one. He knew exactly where he was going, but I didn't. That made it worse. We passed a narrow dirt road to the right, and I could have sworn I saw an old, broken mailbox buried in the weeds. This place wasn't just unfamiliar, it felt completely isolated. Not the kind of place someone passes through casually. David, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I really think we should turn around. I'm not comfortable with this road. He didn't respond immediately. Then, with a crooked smile, he said, You don't trust me? His question hung in the air like smoke. I felt my pulse in my neck. Something had shifted in his expression. He wasn't smiling with kindness anymore. There was something darker there. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a ride home. This was something else. The silence between us grew heavier with every passing second. The engine's hum, once comforting, now felt like the only thing keeping the growing dread from exploding. I didn't answer his question. You don't trust me? Because deep down, I already knew the answer. David kept driving, the road winding deeper into a wooded area. No signs, no houses, just shadows. Then, as if breaking the tension he created, he let out a long sigh and spoke in a softer, almost melancholic voice. You know, he began, I wasn't planning to come this way tonight, but when I saw you standing there, alone, helpless, I took it as a sign. I didn't reply. I just stared out the window, trying to figure out if I could recognize anything. A landmark, a building, anything. I've noticed you since the day you moved in, he continued. You walk with purpose. You don't talk much. You keep to yourself. I like that. A tight knot formed in my stomach. He smiled faintly, eyes still fixed on the road. Linda used to be like that, before everything got complicated. I turned slowly to face him. Complicated how? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the car over to the side of the road. The tires crunched over loose gravel as the car came to a stop. My heartbeat surged. I instinctively reached for the door handle, but I heard the sharp click of the central lock a split second later. He had locked me in. David turned slightly in his seat to face me. His hands rested on the steering wheel, but his eyes, calm, almost distant, were now locked onto mine. "Do you ever feel invisible?" he asked. "Like people only see what they want to see? That no one really knows who you are?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat felt dry and tight. Every instinct in my body was screaming. "Get out." He chuckled. "You know, I think I've always been invisible. Except to you. You always looked me in the eye. You said hi even when you didn't have to. That matters more than you think." There was something broken in his voice. Sadness. Loneliness. But beneath it all was something darker, something not quite right. I tried to keep calm, tried to find a way to de-escalate. "I appreciate that, David. I really do," I said gently. "But it's late. I'd like to go home now." He stared at me for a few seconds, too long, then smiled faintly. "Of course. I'm not a monster. I just wanted you to understand me. Before you go back to ignoring me like everyone else." Then, without warning, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "But you're not like everyone else, are you?" The way he said it, soft, eerie, sent a chill down my spine. I forced a nervous smile, my mind racing for options. If I panicked, I'd lose control. If I stayed calm, maybe, just maybe, I could find a way out. He started the engine again. The moment the car moved, I knew I had to get away from him. No matter what. The car rolled forward slowly, as if mimicking the tension in the air, calm on the surface, but something volatile simmering underneath. I sat perfectly still, afraid that any sudden move might trigger something in David. My hand rested discreetly on the door handle, but I knew it was pointless. The locks were still engaged, and the child's safety mechanism made it impossible to open from the inside without his help. The headlights cut through the thick dark ahead, illuminating the narrow, tree-lined road. The world outside felt empty, silent woods and shadows stretching endlessly. My pulse beat in my ears. David broke the silence again. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said. "I'd never hurt you." But his words didn't comfort me. They terrified me. Because only someone capable of hurting you needs to say that out loud. "You remind me of someone," he continued. "Someone I used to know. She left me before I could explain how much I needed her." His grip on the steering wheel tightened, his knuckles pale under the dashboard light. "I always thought I just needed someone to understand me. And then you moved in. I thought, maybe this is fate. Maybe the universe sent you." He turned his head toward me again, but this time his gaze lingered too long. The car drifted slightly before he corrected the steering. His expression was softer now, but behind it, something unhinged shimmered beneath the surface. I tried to keep my voice calm. "David, I understand. I do. But I'm really scared right now. And I don't think this is okay. You're making me feel unsafe." He laughed just a little, just enough to make my skin crawl. "I'm making you feel unsafe," he echoed. "After I picked you up? After I tried to help you? That's what I get?" "It's not about that," I replied quickly. It's late and I'm tired and I don't know where we are. Please, can you just take me home?" He didn't respond right away. The silence stretched too long, like a held breath that wouldn't release. Then, without a word, he reached to his side and turned the music on. An old jazz station crackled through the speakers, something slow and haunting, the kind of music you'd hear in a dark room with velvet curtains and secrets. The juxtaposition was jarring, this calm soundtrack playing while I sat beside someone whose mood seemed seconds away from snapping. I scanned the dashboard for anything, a button, a manual lock, something I could use. Nothing. And then I saw it. Up ahead, maybe 50 yards down the road, was a stop sign. A small intersection. A dim streetlight flickered at the corner. It might be my only chance. I didn't know if he'd stop. I didn't know if I could outrun him. But one thing was certain, I couldn't sit beside him much longer. Something inside him had twisted into something dangerous. I took a breath. My fingers curled tightly around the handle. If he slowed, if the car stopped for even a second, I was getting out. The stop sign was getting closer. My heart pounded louder with every passing second, each beat matching the rhythm of the tires rolling over the uneven road. I shifted slightly in my seat, testing the door handle again. Still locked. But if he stopped, even briefly, I might have just enough time to unlock it manually and run. David hadn't spoken since he turned the music on. His face was unreadable, eyes fixed ahead, the jazz playing eerily in the background like the soundtrack of a nightmare. I couldn't tell what he was thinking anymore. Maybe he wasn't sure what he was doing either. Maybe he was battling with something inside him. Or maybe, worse, he had already decided exactly how this night would end. The stop sign drew closer. 30 feet. 20. 10. The car slowed. I knew this was it. This was the moment. I had to do something now or risk losing the only chance I might get. I glanced at him quickly. David, can you pull over for a second? I'm not feeling well. My stomach. I think I might throw up. He looked over, surprised, even concerned. Really? Yes, I said quickly, doubling over slightly. Please. I'm serious. I think I'm going to be sick. The car came to a full stop. The jazz faded into a whisper behind the sound of my quickened breathing. David hesitated. I could feel it, the internal debate flashing across his face. Then he reached for the lock switch. Click. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. I didn't wait. In one swift motion, I yanked the door open, flung myself out of the car, and hit the ground running. My foot caught the edge of the curb, nearly twisting my ankle, but I didn't stop. I bolted toward the light at the corner, praying there was someone, anyone, who could help. Wait. Come back. David shouted behind me. I heard the car door swing open, then slam shut. But then another sound cut through the darkness, barking. I turned my head and saw a middle-aged couple walking their dog on the opposite side of the street. They stopped, startled by the sudden commotion. The woman clutched the leash tighter while the man stepped forward. Are you okay? He shouted, already moving toward me. I pointed behind me. Please. That man, he wouldn't let me out of the car. David froze in place. Just for a moment. Then, without another word, he turned back, got into his car, and peeled away, tires screeching against the pavement. The couple ran to me as I collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for air and trembling. The woman knelt beside me, holding my shoulder. It's okay, she said gently. You're safe now. I didn't speak for a few moments. I couldn't. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat and the fading echo of jazz music in my mind. The couple walked me to their nearby house, where they gave me water, a blanket, and a place to sit while they called the police. I was still shaking, my body running on leftover adrenaline and fear. Everything felt blurry, like I was watching myself from outside. My brain was trying to make sense of what had just happened, but the panic hadn't faded yet. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car arrived. The officer, a young woman named Officer Gaines, approached me calmly and respectfully. We got a call about a possible abduction attempt. Can you tell me what happened? I recounted everything, from the moment David offered me a ride to the way he locked the doors and made unsettling confessions, all the way to the escape at the stop sign. I tried to stay composed, but my voice cracked several times. Officer Gaines took notes, asked follow-up questions, and nodded patiently. Do you know his full name? She asked. Yes, David. I think his last name is Harlow. He lives across the street from me with his wife Linda. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. And you say you've only had casual interactions with him before tonight? Just the usual neighbor stuff. A wave, a hello. I never gave him any reason to think. I stopped, realizing I didn't need to justify anything. I had done nothing wrong. He said he'd been watching me. Officer Gaines sighed, then gave a soft nod. We'll go speak with him tonight. But I need to be honest with you, unless he physically harmed or threatened you, it may be hard to press formal charges. My stomach dropped. So he can just get away with it? He didn't technically break any laws. But we can file a report, keep it on record, and request a wellness check. And if you feel unsafe, we can help you arrange a temporary protective order. It wasn't the justice I wanted, but it was something. Later that evening, another officer drove me home. I stood on my front porch, staring across the street at David's house. The lights were off. His car was gone. I didn't know if he had fled or was just hiding inside. The next day, Linda returned. I saw her from my window, struggling to bring luggage inside. I debated whether or not to speak to her. Eventually, I went across the street and knocked on her door. She answered, her eyes tired and red. Hi, I said cautiously. I don't know if you've heard, but something happened last night with David. Her face changed immediately, like she already knew. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You're not the first one. My breath caught. What do you mean? I left because of what he became. I should have warned people. I just hoped he'd change. I stepped back, shaken. David never came back to that house again. A few days later, a moving truck arrived and Linda left too. The neighbors whispered, but no one ever got the full story. Just pieces. And I was left with the knowledge that something truly dark had been living just a few steps from my front door. Months passed, but the memory never faded. On the outside, life seemed to return to normal. The sun still rose over the quiet neighborhood, kids played in their yards, and mailboxes clanged shut with their daily deliveries. But something inside me had changed permanently. I was no longer the same woman who smiled politely at neighbors and trusted familiar faces. Every time I walked to my car, I scanned the street. If I heard tires crunching on gravel behind me, my shoulders tensed. Even simple things, like a knock at the door after dark, made my breath catch in my throat. I kept the porch lights on all night now. I installed security cameras. I never forgot to charge my phone. David never returned. I never saw him again. Part of me feared he might someday show up just once to say goodbye or something worse. But he vanished as quickly as he had turned sinister that night. Maybe the fear of police attention scared him off. Or maybe he simply found a new place. A new face to fixate on. There were still nights I replayed it all in my mind, the locked doors, the wrong turn, the way his voice softened when he said I was different. It haunted me not just because it was terrifying, but because it had almost felt normal at first. That was the scariest part. People always think danger comes from the unknown. A dark alley. A stranger in the shadows. But in reality, it often comes dressed in familiarity. A kind face. A helpful smile. A neighbor offering a ride home. I started journaling after the incident, writing down every feeling, every detail I remembered. It was part therapy, part self-protection. If I ever doubted myself, or if someone else did, I wanted the truth preserved somewhere. A few months later, a new couple moved into David's old house. I watched from my window as they unloaded boxes, laughed together on the porch, and waved at me when they saw me outside. I smiled back, but only briefly. I hadn't spoken to them yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't afraid of the world, I just wasn't naive anymore. That night in David's car taught me something I could never unlearn. Our instincts speak to us for a reason. We silence them too often, trying to be polite, trying not to offend. But instincts are there to protect us. And if I hadn't listened to mine that night, I don't want to think about what could have happened. Now, when I tell my story, people often ask, did you ever feel unsafe before that night? And the honest answer is no, not really. But looking back, I remember the glances, the extra long smiles, the way David always seemed to notice when I came or went. It wasn't one big red flag. It was a collection of whispers I ignored. But I'm not ignoring them anymore. And I'll never forget what he said in that car, because even now, years later, it still gives me chills.